If you didn't know, colleges in America today are shutting down at a rate of one per week. So it was half of that last year. Who knows? It might be twice that next year. And colleges are also peering over what they have termed the demographic cliff, as the decline in birth rate starting with the 2008 economic crash is translating now into a 15% reduction in college attendance across the board. So at least 15% less attendance at colleges across the board starting in 2025. That's just a demographic reality. So colleges all over the country are bracing for the hit. They're all talking in their regents meetings and their faculty meetings about this 15% demographic clip. It's the big problem, or at least they think it is. But with or without that reduction of 15%, colleges have been shutting down at a record rate already. The 15% demographic cliff, it hasn't hit yet, or they haven't hit it yet because of, but they have been shutting down at a record rate because of what I term as an educational Ponzi scheme. And this is how it's worked. As the traditional majors became less lucrative and brought in fewer students, colleges added other majors that were expected to bring in more students and more money. But then when demand for those majors slackened because, because other colleges did the same thing, and so you have all this competition, well, then they added more majors to draw more students to bring in more money. So it was simply the routine basically everywhere. You check the trends, you see what students want and what the market is calling for, and then you create the new major. So right now, anybody know what the new major is nowadays? Project management. That's what it is. And occupational therapy is a big one too. 10 years ago, business management, communications. Colleges go through this process over and over and over again. And the result in the end is dozens of majors, which means expensive buildings for those majors, which means bloated faculty and especially bloated staff, and a business plan that depends on high enrollment and, for private colleges, expensive tuition. So for private colleges, by far the majority of the colleges that are shutting down right now, the average tuition is around $41,000 a year. So that's just tuition. Now, with numbers like this, it's easy to see how a decrease in enrollment of less than 15% could bankrupt a college just within a few years. The financial problem is obvious and everyone knows it. So say a college has 1,500 students and they depend on $25,000 coming in per year per student. I say 25,000 just to be realistic, because even though they might say tuition is $50,000, no college actually charges that 50,000 if they're saying it's $50,000. So they'll set their tuition at 50,000, but then they'll offer scholarships, which are just cost reductions. That is, there's no actual money behind them. It's not like they say it's $50,000 to attend here, but hey, we're going to give you a $25,000 scholarship and that money is coming from this fund. Nope, that money's coming from nowhere. It actually costs $25,000, which is, again, another scam. It's kind of like the department stores, right? So here's a $1,000 suit. We marked it down to $500. And you want to buy it for $500 because you think you're getting a good deal. But no one ever bought it for $1,000. Okay. So anyway, put the actual revenue per student per year at $25,000 for 1,500 students and a 15% reduction. And I know you've all done the math in your head. That's $5,625,000 a year in lost funds. Now, that would soon shut down most liberal arts colleges. That's a lot of money for your operational budget. And by the way, people don't like to donate to operational budgets. They like to donate to building projects and so forth. So you lose $5,000 in operational, or $5 million in operational, we got a big problem. But more important than all these financial concerns is what happens to the mission of a college when it adds majors, not because of its mission, but simply to attract students. What that does is that the reason of existence for the college is the survival of the institution. The institution must survive. And so we need to do this and this and this so that it can survive. And then the founding purpose of promoting a Christian confession or providing just and learned citizens for the good of society, that recedes into the background. Meanwhile, the competition for students, any students, invites the sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that stultify scholarship and compromise the very culture the college was founded to uphold in the first place. So, in many cases, the current mission of a college that has gone through this process that I just described is literally the opposite of its founding mission. You see this in Harvard. You see this in Yale. Those were originally founded as conservative, classical Christian colleges. And now they are secular, they're thoroughly feminist, they're careerist, they're anti-family, they're anti-traditional Christianity. Most of the big-time Roman Catholic, maybe all of the big-time Roman Catholic colleges are the same way. But you see this also in micro form at small religious colleges, no matter the denomination. Mission shift is the story of most private colleges today. So it is no surprise that besides those that are too big to fail, with huge endowments, which are almost all culturally and politically liberal, so that's like Harvard and Yale, they can't shut down. They've got hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in endowments. Or those colleges like Hillsdale that actually have kept true to their mission. So besides those ones, private colleges are running into financial and identity crises across the nation. Now, in the Lutheran world, specifically the Missouri Synod, we had 10 universities about 10 years ago. We had 10. We're down to 5. And those 5, by the way, we have high hopes for. Smaller can be better in this case. And there's a renewed focus in the LCMS. We saw this at the last LCMS convention, a renewed focus on Lutheran identity, Lutheran standard in our universities. These are all good signs. But to get back, Concordia Portland, one of the 5 that we lost, is a great example of mission shift and financial instability. It sought to grow bigger and bigger. It attracted more and more students who were not just non-Lutheran, but sometimes anti-Lutheran, and in many cases anti-Christian. With all the majors it offered, Concordia Portland couldn't find Lutheran professors or professors that were even aligned with the original confession of the college, and soon had professors teaching the sort of woke nonsense that we see in all the secular universities, especially in the liberal arts with their gender studies and their LGBTQIA plus agenda. By the time Portland shut down, a tiny percentage of the population was Lutheran. I forget the stat. It's like 1%, 2%, somewhere around there of the students are Lutheran. And most of the professors were non-Lutheran or non-Christian. And though they had grown to thousands of students, they needed more and more and more to pay the bills, and they couldn't pay the bills. This is the story not just of Concordia Portland, but of hundreds of other private colleges throughout the nation. So what do you do? Well, there is a growing trend among young conservatives simply to write off college. Just don't go. Write it off as worse than useless. Nothing but propaganda centers for radical left, anti-human, soul-destroying ideologies. Charlie Kirk wrote a book on it. You can read it. I don't know. I'll read a review of it first, because it's long. And it's true that most people who go to college, these secular colleges and a lot of these religious colleges, would be better off not going at all. They'd be better off saving their money. They'd be better off learning a trade. You ask any employer, and what they want is not necessarily a college degree, but what they want is competence and respect, showing up on time because you're not addicted to pot or worse, to video games. But it might not be worse. I don't know. Don't get addicted to either one, all right? But this retreat from higher education, and again, college isn't for everybody, right? But the retreat from higher education wholesale will not serve our families, our congregations, our communities, or our country. We need educated people, the Christian church in particular, Christian families, so fathers and mothers can teach their children, communities. They depend on common sense, basic morality. They all need men and women who know how to think, who know how to speak, and who know how to live well. The problem is not with college per se, and we should not overreact. It is with the progressive agenda that has permeated higher education, and that can be fixed. Not, not by going in and changing Harvard, right? That's not going to happen. But how does it happen? You start new colleges. When things are getting destroyed, you build up. You know that when the Israelites, Jerusalem's destroyed. Right? This is 86 BC. Nebuchadnezzar comes, destroys Jerusalem, brings all of these Israelites, Jews, to Babylon. You know what they did? They built houses. They handed down the faith, built synagogues, so forth. And for 70 years, they kept on building up from the ashes until God, through Cyrus, sent them back, and then they rebuilt Jerusalem. So you never, ever stop building. So this is what we did. This speech is not really about what we did, but I'm going to give you, because this is like, we did it. And so it's a great example of what we can do. And that is to start new colleges. In 2020, after we had just seen 3 formerly conservative Lutheran colleges close down, and after a few of us Lutherans had read Anthony Esselin's excellent book, Out of the Ashes, where he says, go ahead, do it, build out of the ashes, quit complaining. A group of conservative Lutherans started Luther Classical College in Casper, Wyoming. And this was not a top-down foundation of a college. So it didn't come from the Purple Palace or the International Center in St. Louis of the Missouri Synod. It didn't come from the top down. And we're not owned, by the way, by the Missouri Synod or operated by them. We want to connect. We're very friendly with them, right? But we're not run by them. This college came from pastors, parents, congregations who wanted an affordable, classical, conservative Lutheran college. And we're getting it. So we're set to begin classes in 2025, so a year from now. Luther Classical College has already enjoyed unprecedented success. We have 200 congregations across the country that have joined together to support us, along with thousands of grassroots supporters. We've raised millions of dollars and we've already begun construction of our campus. Before the college was even announcing a single professor, or before we put up a single building, hundreds of students expressed interest in coming, and dozens put off college for a year or years after graduating high school so they can attend LCC when it opens. So why the excitement? Why this enthusiasm? Well, first and foremost, because we've stated that we're going to give students a college that stands openly, without apology, for Christian and conservative and eternal principles, and we actually use those words. And we openly and loudly and happily oppose the woke agenda, not only because it's gross, but also because it's anti-intellectual and it's detrimental to human flourishing. And then we openly promote the family. We openly promote motherhood, fatherhood, the gift of children. It's right on our website, on our promotional materials. Now, it surprised me at the time, and I suppose it still does, that this promotion of family is what particularly stirs up love and enthusiasm for what we're doing on the one hand, and then on the other hand, derision and ire against us from our detractors. You see this echoed right now. Mrs. Eberstadt pointed this out too. You see this echoed in the secular sphere with the attacks on J.D. Vance. They attack him. Why? It's economic policies? No, it's not. They attack him because he promotes motherhood, because he promotes fatherhood, because he promotes having families. It's all over the news. He is the worst VP pick in modern history. That's what they say. And the reason is almost exclusively his saying once upon a time that women should be getting married and having children. Really controversial, isn't it? The feminist agenda is not simply in the leftist wing, though, of American politics. It's deeply entrenched, even within conservative churches. And I would say it's deeply entrenched in every single one of us, because it's in the air we breathe. So I, who grew up probably in the most conservative family imaginable, right? With 11, no, I don't have 11 brothers. I have 10 brothers and one sister, all of whom are more conservative than I am, right? Who grew up with a stay-at-home mom, who now have 9 children, as you heard, with my wonderful wife, and live the same way that I grew up. I am still particularly sensitive to feminist concerns. I can't help it. It is as if I have to apologize and explain that although my wife is only a stay-at-home mom, I still value her as an eminently capable, intelligent, and productive person. As if this would be put into doubt because she's not working in a cubicle somewhere. We have all consumed the totally unbiblical and thoroughly Marxist lie that motherhood is somehow demeaning and that working outside the home is what makes a person valuable. From childhood to old age, when we talk about a person, we talk about him economically. That's how we define him, by what he does outside the home. So when we proudly stand on family, on motherhood and fatherhood, people, even within our own churches, think that we are somehow demeaning women on the one hand. No, on the other hand, they think we're being impractical. Well, how is teaching about fatherhood going to prepare people for the workforce? And we have to push against this. If we're going to build new, we have to push against this. We have to destroy that rotten foundation of feminism, anti-family Marxism, destroy it, annihilate it, and then put the firm foundation of the Bible down. First, college is not primarily for preparing people for the workforce. It's not. The idea that it is arose only after Marx. College is for preparing people for life as members of society, and the foundation of society is family and church and citizenship. In Lutheran theology, we call these the 3 estates. What God instituted at the beginning, these are laws and they're institutions that are as fundamental to reality as gravity. God never meant this world to work without the family, the church, and ordered government. And we are seeing today what ages before us have seen again and again. You undermine the family, and you lose first civil society, and then church, and then government, and the barbarians, who at least got the family part right, march in to take over. Kipling prophesied this a century ago in his poem. Anybody know the poem, The Gods of the Copybook Headings? If you're, of high school age, it's a great one to memorize. Just fantastic, the entire thing. But I'm going to give you one verse. The gods of the copybook headings. On the first Femininian sandstones, they promised the fuller life, which started by loving your neighbor, then ended with loving his wife, till our women had no more children, and our men had lost reason and faith, and the gods of the copybook headings said, the wages of sin is death. That's 100 years ago. That's Kipling. He was a prophet, but I don't think it was too hard to be a prophet back then, uh, especially given what we heard about Marx yesterday. So the new college, the colleges that we need to start, must be unapologetic about the promotion of the family. And the younger generations want exactly this. Those who grew up hearing the immortal words of fun, what do I stand for? I don't know. They, you guys don't get the reference, huh? We were just talking about how you're not supposed to make these popular references because people have different tastes. Fun is a rock group, and they sing a song that says, what do I stand for? I don't know. That's like the theme. But that is actually what people want to know. What do they stand for? And they want to be able to answer it, to know there's a firm foundation, not Feminian sandstones, but solid rock on which to build and stand. And that starts with man and woman raising children together in the fear of the Lord. This is also why a college needs to champion the intellectual heritage of the Christian Western civilization. Look at the great classics. Look at the Odyssey. Look at the Iliad. What does Odysseus fight for? What does he stand for in the end? His wife, his home, his country, Ithaca, his son. He leaves behind eternal life with a beautiful goddess on a beautiful island for what is objectively better. And that is Penelope and Telemachus, his wife and his son. That's beautiful. Why did the Greeks fight for 10 years at the walls of Troy? It was to protect the honor and dignity of marriage. And even Helen, the adulteress, agrees. What moves Achilles to set aside his infamous wrath? Love for his father, respect for Priam's love for his son Hector. And that's pagan mythology. You take that and you put it on the solid foundation of Christianity, and you get Western civilization. And Western civilization, through and through, with its history, its philosophy, its theology, its music, its scientific discovery, it is built on the integrity of the family. So the colleges that we build need to be authentic, not fake. So Merriam-Webster, did you know this? Merriam-Webster has words of the year. Okay? And Merriam-Webster's word for the year for 2023 was the word authentic, because that's what people were looking up the most, especially the younger generation. And the younger generation, and I don't know if I'm talking about myself when I say the younger generation. I got 9 kids, so I don't think so. But the younger generation, especially, is sick of marketing sloganeering and cafeteria-style approaches to truth. College needs to give a concrete, true account of life that is an authentic worldview. Their students not simply to be a cog in the economic wheel, but to be active citizens, to start and maintain stable families, and to make first things first by active participation in the congregational life of their churches. So Luther Classical College is doing exactly the opposite of the failing colleges. Instead of compromising its mission to accommodate more students, we are attracting students on the basis of our mission. Just loud and clear. This is our mission. Come because of the mission. And it's unapologetically conservative and Lutheran and classical. And instead of charging $40,000 a year and driving students into debt, we set tuition at $8,500. And we don't take any government aid or anything like that. And we seek the support of congregations and individuals to make up the difference in revenue, because $8,500 doesn't cut it. And we're getting it. Right now, with 7 full-time faculty and staff, we're beating our budget without having any tuition dollars at all. We haven't even started. Instead of seeking to grow bigger and bigger and relying on increased enrollment to make budget, LCC is purposely limiting its enrollment to around 300 students, which minimizes staff, minimizes expense. If we get too big, we'll just start another one. It's a business model that works not just now, but in the future. Instead of multiplying majors, which always means that you're going to do many things with mediocrity, we're offering one major with excellence. This is how it was done in times past, and it's how we have to do it in the future. Harvard, College of William and Mary, Princeton, they educated 5 out of our first 6 presidents. And they were each small, denominational, classical college, where students all studied basically the same classical sources and were prepared to think well, speak well, know the history, language, and politics of Western civilization. And so they became patriotic, God-fearing, productive citizens and householders, and in this case, politicians. Without this kind of education, it is unthinkable that the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution of the United States could have been written or supported. Simply unthinkable without this sort of classical college education. And we need to realize that it is also impossible for our citizens, that means for us, to understand and hold to the principles of the Declaration of the Constitution unless we have something resembling the education that our founding fathers had. So let me give you a trivial example from the conservative side in the song God Bless the USA, which is President Trump's favorite song, right? It is. He released a Bible with it in there, right? The Trump edition, right? So where we sing this, and you all know the word. We could sing it if you want. Just kidding. We won't. I'm proud to be an American because at least I know I'm free, and I won't forget the men who died who gave that right to me. Well, who gave that right to you? The only man who died to give your rights to you was Jesus Christ. They are God-given rights. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. I won't forget the men who died, who protected that right for me, but they did not give it. The Creator did. So our founding fathers, why do they think this way? I mean, this is Thomas Jefferson. He's not a Christian. Why does he think this way? Well, I can guarantee you that he read Sophocles. He read Sophocles' play Antigone, where Antigone stands up to tyranny. And she says she must obey the gods rather than men. And that the fundamental right, her brother had been killed, and he's an enemy of the state, but her brother had been killed. And she claimed her fundamental right was to bury her brother, and that it could not be superseded by the conventions of political government. She gives her life for that principle. Antigone knew that her rights as a sister and as a human being came from God. And that's the education that forms free citizens and not slaves to tyranny. So the colleges we found have to be pro-family, and they have to be anchored in the tradition of Western civilization. Now, I hope these points, I haven't had any fruit thrown at me, so I hope these points are unobjectionable and self-evident to conservative Christians today. My next point might not be, but I think it's an equally important foundation for a college. And that is that a college must have a specific theological confession. A college not anchored to a specific theological confession will in time have no theological confession at all. C.S. Lewis, who's read Mere Christianity? C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. It's a great book. There's a couple things wrong with it. I have to say that because I'm a Lutheran. But overall, fantastic. And one of my favorite parts is his introduction, where he noted that mere Christianity is only a hallway, and no one actually lives in a hallway. It's the denominations. It's the specific confessions of specific churches. They're the rooms, they're the homes where Christians actually live and talk and thrive. So generic Christianity, where you don't actually confess this or that, but generically Christian, it devolves into compromise after compromise as the generic becomes vapid by lack of conviction and specific confession. So my point here is that a Catholic college needs to be unapologetically Catholic. That's what we have in Wyoming with Wyoming Catholic College in Lander, Wyoming, which is thriving despite literally being in the middle of nowhere. Anybody been to Lander, Wyoming? I didn't think so. um, a reformed college needs to be unapologetically reformed. So you take New St. Andrews, you take Patrick Henry, and then a Lutheran college that needs to be unapologetically Lutheran. Just don't apologize. It's okay. People can disagree with you. Fellow Christians can disagree with you. You don't have to be mean about it, right? But don't apologize for what you believe. Stand on it. As the sainted Aaron Wolf pointed out shortly before he died, different denominations taking doctrine seriously helps to strengthen the Christian faith confessed throughout Christendom. Because then that means we're all taking the Bible and the Christian tradition seriously, and we're arguing based on these holy texts. And we're arguing for what we all believe is worth fighting for, is worth dying for. So Lutherans and Reformed, just to give you an example, if Lutherans and Reformed debate over the bodily presence of Christ in the Lord's Supper, right? Is it Jesus' actual flesh and blood? And we do debate about that. If we're doing that, are we doubting the truth of the Bible when we're doing that? No, we're taking it for granted, right? This is like if you're changing an oil on a car, you're not like, do cars really exist? You're changing the oil on a car. So when you're arguing theology, you are taking for granted that Jesus' words are true, they're authoritative, they're spoken by the Son of God in human flesh, and that's why they're worth arguing about. And the argument then between us only strengthens our faith in the authority of the Bible, and hopefully then brings respect for one another on other points, even as we vehemently disagree on the point at issue, because obviously it is Jesus' real body and blood. So this is how Christianity flourishes in America. It's not by compromise. I make this point first because there's a push and big money is being donated to start colleges like the University of Austin or Rolston College, where Jordan Peterson, who's been mentioned several times today, is chancellor. At least he used to be chancellor. I think he's still chancellor there. I could do my Jordan Peterson impression after the talk if you would like me to. So these colleges are anti-woke, and they present themselves as institutions that promote free inquiry and pursuit of the truth, but they are expressly non-religious. They're returning basically to deistic roots. They want a college where you don't have to believe in Christ or even in God, but you do stand on the intellectual tradition that the Christian church preserved for 2,000 years. Now, the problem here should be obvious. I'll list two problems. And the first is historical. What happened to all the deist colleges? Right? What happened to colleges that abandoned a specific doctrinal confession but wanted to still hold on to the principles of Western civilization? What happened to Harvard, Princeton, Yale? They moved from denominational to generically Christian to deistic. Their definition of the truth wasn't specific, and so they drifted with the culture, and they became exactly what colleges like University of Austin and Rolston College are fighting against. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat its failures. And the second point is philosophical and theological. You simply cannot hold on to the truth unless you assert it specifically. Assertions abhor a vacuum. If the theological assertion that God made them male and female gives way to the free search for truth, you will end with the same problem of pronouns that Peterson so abhors. The self-evident truths are impossible without a God who establishes them. Logic itself is an absurdity without the logic giver. Second, the attempt to make pan-Christian colleges will similarly lead to mission drift. Now, there are pan-Christian colleges, Grove City, Hillsdale, which are outrageously successful, faithful, they're well-funded, offer classical educations for the most part. They have too many majors for my taste, but right. And I definitely consider sending my own children to a Hillsdale or to a Grove City if we weren't establishing Luther Classical College. But even at Hillsdale, there is a necessary drift into political and social thinking of the prevailing conservative fervor of the time. The Republican platform changes every 4 years. The definition of Christian by intellectual conservatives changes yearly. Unless you have a firm foundation of specific confessional commitment, the conservative tomorrow will be considered liberal by yesterday's standards. So the colleges that we start are going to need a firmer foundation. The drift with the culture is inescapable without a specific confession of the truth. So let your Lutheran college be Lutheran, and let your Reformed college be Reformed, and then we can, in your Catholic college, Catholic, and then let's get together and hold discussions and argue. Lastly, let me return to the careerist approach of basically all modern colleges, basically all of them. Whether they're conservative or liberal, it doesn't matter. They have adopted the Marxist idea that college is about making money. That's why you go to college. So you can get a career to make money. Search college websites, even religious ones. And besides some vocational training for pastors and teachers and generic talk about giving Jesus to the students, the undeniable focus is on career for men and women alike. The statistics they tout are gainful employment after graduation. I would love to have statistics that say divorce rate after graduation, right? Um, Retention in church after graduation, because I mean, that's what we care about, isn't it? People need to make money, right? Obviously. An end of college, that is a goal of college, should be the capacity to make money, obviously. But it is not the goal. It is not the goal, and we need to get this through our heads. If it's the primary goal, you have just taught people to think in terms diametrically opposed to the Christian faith, whose fundamental view of life is summed up in the words of the Savior: seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all other things will be added unto you. This is true. The statement of Jesus. It's true. If you focus on the kingdom of God, which includes not only our justification before God for Christ's sake, but also the life that we live as Christians, as members of families and community and society and church, then the other things will follow naturally. You will be a capable worker because you will have studied logic and philosophy and history and rhetoric and science, not with the view of making money, but with the view of helping your neighbor and glorifying God and discovering the truths of his creation. And you will then have fulfillment in your career because you'll know what you're working for. This is what Donna Harrison pointed out before. It's insane to teach people science and medicine without teaching them what they're doing it for. Right? You're going to create mad scientists who are actually willing to kill innocent little babies, and that's what we've gotten. You need to know what you're working for, and that's not to have a bunch of money when you die, which moth and rust destroy, and thieves break in and steal, but to support the church, the family, community, and the nation that God has given you. And again, the classics teach this. This is why we teach the classics. Take Plato. His dialogues often feature Socrates debating with the sophists, men who taught the art of speaking for money, but didn't, along with the skill of speaking, convey the truth which needed to be spoken and defended. So they teach people how to speak, but they wouldn't tell them what to speak about. You teach people how to speak to make money, and they'll put their own personal interests above the state, above the gods, in our case, above God, and above family. And that's Plato's point. Socrates again and again insists that if you don't know what's true, you don't know what's good, then your ability to speak is detrimental to the state. It's detrimental to mankind. Our modern educational system exposes itself to the same criticism. From elementary schools to universities, students learn how to do stuff to make money, but they do not learn what the value of work or the value of money is, what their purposes are. And this is why colleges that we found have to be classical, even if that word isn't in the name of the college, right? Classical education, often defined as the teaching of the good, the true, and the beautiful, is very simply an education that teaches the whole man and forms articulate, clear-thinking, patriotic people who are capable not only for the workforce, but also for life in family, community, and church. So that's why, of course, we named our college Luther Classical College. because through the study of Western civilization's greatest works, students learn and know, and they're firmly convinced that life is more than food and the body more than clothing. While at the same time, they gain exactly the knowledge and capabilities that you need for most any job. Now, an anecdote here, an owner of a multi-million dollar business that stretches over half of the US recently told me how much he hates interviewing business majors. No offense to business majors there. They think they know everything he said, and they don't want to learn more. Like graduation meant they were done learning. So he hires mostly liberal arts majors to manage his business because they actually want to keep learning the specifics of his business. I've talked to many an employer who doesn't care a bit about the name of your degree, who would really rather not have to unteach everything you learned in college. They want people who can learn on the job. And everyone who actually has a job worth having will tell you that they learn most of what they know. How? On the job, by doing it. Employers want respectful, hardworking, capable, intelligent people. And that's the point of classical education. And its focus, of course, is first on the family and the church. So, our country needs colleges like Luther Classical College. We just need them. We need make them Catholic, make them Reformed, make them Baptist, make them especially Lutheran, but make them conservative, authentic, true to the heritage we have inherited as Americans and as Christians. Our kids deserve it, and our world needs it. Thank you.
You spoke about what you're going to do to make sure the institution doesn't go like the way of Concordia Portland. Uh,
Mhm.
what is the plan for making sure the students who graduate are, say, more devoutly Lutheran than they were when they came? I had a encounter with a uh, graduate from Concordia, Chicago, who was a teacher at a Lutheran elementary school and did not believe baptism saves. Very concerned about that. So, what is the plan for LCC to make sure you don't end up producing that kind of uh, graduate?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, and of course, you can't guarantee any result, right? But you can put safeguards. First off, people who come to Luther Classical College make a sign a confession of faith, and that confession of faith is basically that it's foundationally Lutheran. It's not like we make them read the entire Book of Concord before they come. We do that in class or in classes. Um, the you're basically you're a Lutheran when you come, right? And so the statement of faith says that baptism saves. So you would have had to have lied to get in, right? If you didn't believe that. But yeah, I think that'll help. Yeah, exactly. So the other thing is, everyone's going to go to chapel. It's just part of their grade for what we call Christian culture. And so, and this isn't like this. Hey, you got to go to chapel as some like law thing, though it is. It's also quite voluntary. It's just part of the campus life, and there are things being taught in the sermon that you uh, that are going to translate into all of your classes, and so it makes no sense, right, for you not to be in chapel. So the community itself will be centered around the preaching of the Word of God, and the classes themselves also are the Lutheran faith is thoroughly entwined in all the subjects.
Thank you for speaking. This has all been very interesting to all of us, I think. But why are you building it in Wyoming?
Because I live there. Um, that's a great question. That's my first answer because I live there. We have very faithful Lutheran congregations, LCMS congregations in Casper that work very well together. We have what I think is the best classical Lutheran school, I should say, in the United States, in Casper. So it's a natural outgrowth from that. It goes K through 12. Um, and we also have a friendly state as far as laws go for education. I don't know if you know, but Wyoming's pretty conservative. Um, and also, the West doesn't have a college. I mean, the Mountain West, it just doesn't have one, not a Lutheran one. So it makes a lot of sense to start the first Luther classical college in Casper, Wyoming.
Well, I'm going to confess that I am a college professor at a large public university nearby. And I will agree that the proliferation of majors is like out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
Esports marketing is the newest one that's,
Mm-hmm.
maybe coming online. Just that's how ridiculous we've gotten there. But I want to question the there is the enrollment cliff. It's coming. We're all planning for it or not planning for it, depending on where you are. But it's really the sustainability. And so I think you got a lot of energy and maybe some financial backing right now, but this is a long game.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, I guess my question for you is, how do you win the long game? Because sure, you're not spending much money now and you have a handful of faculty developing curriculum or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question is kind of the long game. What's your long-term strategic plan?
Mm-hmm.
Is the one question. And is there still a couple colleges that do the great books? Do you
Yeah.
remember? There. Okay. I just was like, do they still exist? I remember that was.
They still do. Yeah. There's a number of colleges that do the great books. Wyoming Catholic College is one. And we're basically one once we start. Yeah. So our business plan, as far as like operational, requires $1 million a year to come in from supporters. So congregations, individual supporters, and again, we're getting that. A lot of them are just monthly supporters, and so that right now is beautifully stable, right? And we would continue to nurture those relationships, um, and then everything else covered by tuition. So you just don't grow. That's the point. You come to 300, 350 students, and you see that the financial plan works. You don't add a major. You don't try to get to 600 or 700 and build a new building and so forth. And you don't build new buildings until you can pay for them through donations. So that's our plan, and it works. It has worked so far.
But I mean, I was grew up in Milwaukee, and I went to Lutheran High School that very gradually built in. Was Wisconsin Synod, the Wisconsin Lutheran College, and they very gradually build the college. It started with a 2-year, but now there are over 1,000 students who enter, and they have not all the majors, obviously, they only have sports marketing. But but they have a variety of majors, right? That biology or whatever. Because students and parents, while I agree liberal arts education is great, there's still people who actually want to leave school and be a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to leave school and be an accountant.
Yep.
And you can't do that.
Right.
So there's always going to be a limited appeal for the people who want a liberal arts education.
100%. My point is twofold. One is the appeal for the liberal arts should be far broader than it is right now. There are a lot of majors that simply don't need to exist, and that will the liberal arts degree will prepare you for workforce. But you're right. You get technical. You cannot become an engineer by going to Luther Classical College, right? You can't become a nurse. There are technical aspects to work that if you want to do that, you wouldn't come, or you would come for the first 2 years, get the AA, and transfer to a place that has those specialized degrees. Yep. And so there's always going to be a place for those. That's why I think I spoke well of the Concordias that still exist, and part of the reason that they have a lot of those majors is because you actually can do engineering or nursing or something like that in a Christian environment. And that's good.
Will you teach Latin and Greek and maybe German, or would you just learn all in translation?
Oh no, yeah, actually, it's a requirement. You're supposed to have a year of Latin done before you come to the college. We're the only college in the nation, maybe in the world, that requires that, which is pretty awesome. Um, and if you don't have Latin before you come, then we have a bridge course in the summer where you can learn it. So you just come 8 weeks early, and one of us will teach you Latin. But yeah, there's a strong focus on Latin throughout the 4 years, and Greek and Hebrew for those who want to sort of minor in the biblical studies track.
I was just wondering, dorm life. Where are they going to live? You talked about where they're going to go to school. Where are they going to live while they're going to school?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. Just kidding. I do know.
They got a lot of tents in Wyoming, don't they?
Yeah. It's not windy at all there, so you can just put up a tent. Everything's fine. So, by the way, Wyoming's beautiful. It's another reason to build a college there. I have a mountain in my backyard. I'll show you pictures. So we bought an apartment complex. That's for 16 people. It's a fourplex. We have a campaign in Casper itself for families to house students. Okay, so people are signing up for that, and then the students will pay a certain amount for basically room and board, so that they can be fed there and stay. Frankly, that's what I would want if I lived outside of Casper and I were sending my daughter, say, there. I would love for her to stay at a Lutheran home with a family and so forth. And then we have raised the funds for our first dorm building, which will be on campus there, and so some very generous donations. And the plan is hopefully, I mean, you never know with building nowadays, but to have that built by next August when our first class comes, and that'll house about 20 students. And those dorms are pretty awesome because they're not dorms, they're houses. And you walk in, and there's a living room with a dining room and kitchen. And then off to this side is sort of like a suite where you've got 2 bedrooms along with a bathroom. Same thing over here. And so basically everybody comes together for meals when they can. And you have more of a family atmosphere instead of it being like walking around with a towel in a hallway to go to a bathroom, which I did not like one bit.
Thank you, Reverend Preus.